going through engineering college, there were only 5 women in a graduating class of 150 at Purdue University. It was a top 10 engineering school, so the stress was incredibly high. And my friends made it very clear to me that if I had to survive my program, I really had to get in some exercise during the day. And that's when my sort of regular running / cycling came about. I was already doing 2 sports, and I also picked up a bit of swimming just to break the monotony. I think basically all triathletes are, I think they have attention deficit disorder. They can't do one sport and be happy, and so therefore I picked up 3, and there was no one particular moment that sort of told me that I should do a triathlon. I just did my first triathlon as a graduation gift to myself because these races are incredibly expensive and difficult to get to. But once I started, I realized that it was an incredible physical challenge, and I kept going, and it took about 4 to 5 years for my fitness to reach a level where I could even dream of doing an Ironman. But however, I trained for my first Ironman in India. The entire year I trained here in Bangalore. I would wake up at 3 in the morning to get my bike rides in, because typically our bike rides are anywhere from 80 kilometers to 120 kilometers in training. And the running was also a challenge in itself, because I'm either being chased by dogs or crazy men or whatever, some combination of the two. And it was a huge challenge in itself. And I think and the swimming was another big challenge, as you can imagine, for women here. And I just took that in my stride because I don't like being told what I cannot do. I'd rather thrive on what I can do. And when I finished my first Ironman, I realized that given my training circumstances, if I could finish a race like this, I think that said something for my mental fortitude or my ability, physically as well. And in the years that followed, I kind of kept my training alive, even though I had some really bad times. There was no structural support, and there was no other support really. And I didn't look for it because I don't feel entitled to these things. I think we have to work for whatever it is that we achieve, and I just continued doing my own thing as my private passion. Didn't tell anyone, not even the media, and so after 2 or 3 years of putting together a very consistent racing schedule, I managed to qualify for the World Championships in the half Ironman distance in 2008, in the middle of doing a Ph.D. and also working full time. At that time, I realized that I really wanted to take the sport to the next level, because our country is not on the map in this particular sport, because there is no real payback. It's not like big money sport like tennis or cricket where you can make a lot of money. And after 6 years and then qualifying for the World Championships, I realized that all right, maybe there is something here, and I shouldn't balk at the challenge. I have to take it with what I have, and that's when I stepped it up. And in the year that followed, I did a 3-day stage race called the Ultraman triathlon, which has a 10-kilometer swim, 420 kilometers on the bike, and an 84.4 kilometer run over 3 days. And I think there are time limits also on each day, as to you have to finish everything in 12 hours. So 12 hours a day. And once I finished that became sort of the highlight of my athletic career. And I decided that if I ever wanted to take this seriously, I had the goods, physically and otherwise. I was, very, very fit, and I started to believe in myself more after that point. And I then, looked for sponsors and more systematic funding to get my sport to the next level. And now I've taken it even one notch further. And this year I'm going to be competing professionally throughout the world, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's an intimidating thing, but I think I'm really looking forward to it. One of the most authentic moments I've had as an athlete is probably finishing Ironman Canada 3 weeks after Ultraman Canada. Now, when I was doing Ultraman Canada, nobody knew who I was. They thought I was this random Indian chick who was trying to finish this race, and she has a nose ring. What is she trying to do, right? Nobody knew who I was. But by the time I started Ironman Canada, which nobody else in the world had attempted 2 big races like this so close together, everybody in Penticton knew my name, and everybody was cheering for me. And I think, that was one of my most authentic moments as an athlete, because in endurance sport you don't really have cheering crowds and clapping fans. You're pretty much alone by yourself. But to hear so many people know my name and to say, "Go Anu," "Go India," or whatever it is that they were saying. And I love Canadians, God bless their heart, I think they're great. I think that was probably one of my most authentic moments, because I knew physically for me to put myself through that was a highlight in itself athletically. And then to have this wonderful energy from the crowd, that was the clincher, and I loved it. And I think, more power to optimism. As far as managing time goes, I think everybody wants the magic bullet. There is no magic bullet. The trick to managing time is really, to sort of avoid the noises that take away, and this could be a negative person around you, this could be somebody telling you what not to do, this could be the Times of India telling you how bad the world is. Don't read stuff like that. Don't read the news that is negative. Don't surround yourself with people that are negative. I think if we understand that life has both positive and negative messages, and it's for us to pick and choose, and if we can stay steadfast and pick the positive messages, I think there is a huge, beautiful horizon that we will eventually see. And it's not about attention or money or fame or national television. It's more of that lightness of being. Once you know for yourself who you are and what you can achieve and things like that. I would probably tell women out there that you need to find your identity outside of your family, outside of being just a good mother, a good wife, and a good sister or a good spouse or whatever it is. I think that our sense of identity has to also be complete when it comes to a moment of solitude. So when you have all that taken away from you, who are you? And you should know that. I think it's a very powerful thing for someone to know that no matter what other relationships I have, which are all wonderful and extremely fulfilling in their own way, who am I when I stand alone? And once we know that, it will be very difficult for anyone to defeat us in any way. I think mostly mentally, because I think there are a lot of stereotypes that we have to overcome, a lot of noise and inertia that we have to overcome. And I think the kind of messages I try to tell the people that I work with or people who work for me is that try and have a healthy life. I think your health is very much at a premium, because you're going to go ahead and then you're going to be mothers and things like that. And those are very difficult phases in their own way on the body. It's not something that we talk about openly because, it's taboo or whatever the situation might be. But everybody knows at the end of the day that, we do take the brunt of a family's sort of path through life. So I think to all the women out there, I'd say that try and find your sense of identity when there is nothing else to sort of fill the space. If you were standing somewhere by yourself, who are you? And if you know the answer to that, then no one can defeat you. And I think that's very important, because a sense of self-respect only is born out of that sense of identity. And once you have that, really, you're free. You're free. So.